Morning, you're listening to Bite-Sized Book Reviews, and today's book is called Hot Lead, Cold Iron by Marmell. The main character is currently going by the name Mick and he's a fairy. He's a former lord of the Sealy court, only because of events that are not specifically discussed in this book. He actually had a major falling out with the others of his kind some time ago and made the decision to abandon his position and move into the human world, even though things like iron and stuff do hurt him. So now instead he works as a private investigator in 1930s Chicago. This particular case begins when he is approached by the wife of a mobster to look for her missing daughter, because recently she discovered that the girl she has been raising is not actually human, like she's a changeling, and instead like her real daughter was swapped out at birth. And so Mick now has to kind of like, I guess, go back into fairy and confront some of the ill feelings he has about like his own home and his people and stuff as he searches for the missing child and tries to reunite her with her family, and at the same time tries to figure out just what happened all those years ago. Something I liked about this book was just the way it handled fairies and stuff. Like, I'm not typically particularly interested in stories that talk about things like the Sealy and Unsealy court. Like, I'm not really sure why, but I think a lot of the lore, like that kind of lore, just doesn't really interest me and tends not to create a world that particularly resonate with me. But this story, like, it doesn't spend much time going on about like how beautiful things are, for instance. Like, it actually chooses to emphasize, like in its world descriptions of fairy, the fact that one major difference between fairies and people is the fact that they tend not to be as creative, or not people, as humans. So a lot of their cities are more like really bizarre mirror images of human cities. Like, they take human concepts and sort of reinvent them in their own ways, and sometimes those ways are kind of funny because you pick up, I guess, odd things and use them in odd ways. I guess it just kind of creates a world that I actually found kind of interesting to learn about, and actually Mick himself, like there's certain characteristics to him as a main character that are kind of funny to think about as a detective in this world, like the fact that he doesn't eat and only drinks milk. Like, a lot of his acquaintances find it really weird that you don't drink alcohol, for instance. Like, these little quirks, I guess, that make him a kind of interesting main character. Something I did not like, though, was this book is written in first person and has a really extensive use of 1930s slang, as well as a lot of figurative language. So the author does have a note that they tried to make sure there was enough in the way of context clues that you can figure out what a lot of the different terminologies and stuff actually mean without having to look it up. And I do think they do a good job of that. Like, it's not like you can't really understand it, but I think the fact that the use of slang and figurative language is so pervasive is like every other sentence, like it makes it a little bit it makes reading it feel a bit like hard work, I guess, for something that you're reading for entertainment. Like, just as an example, like I wrote down a few things from the early sections, like using blinkers or peepers to refer to eyes, and talking about like beating feet when someone was running away. Like, there's so much of this kind of language that reading it was a little bit tiring. Like, I think I did get used to it by the end, but it makes it so that I don't necessarily want to read the next book right away, even though I think I probably will read it eventually.